You talk a lot about the gaps in education. Give me some examples of how that plays out.
So this starts long before people are even born. If you look at the family structure of rich families and the family structure of middle class and poor families, rich kids are much, much more likely to be born into families with both parents still in the household. If you are a woman without a high school degree, or even with a high school degree but no college degree in the United States today, you will have roughly 60% of your children outside of wedlock. If you're a woman with a graduate degree, you'll have only 5% of your children outside of wedlock. So right from the get-go, kids of rich, educated parents have both parents in the household, and other kids usually don't. And then the rich parents just start spending money on their kids. You know, a typical public high school in the United States spends maybe $15,000 a year per child to educate the kids. A really poor high school might spend $8,000 or $10,000 a year, so that's a gap of about $5,000. But the top 20 private schools, as measured by Forbes, spend on average $75,000 a year per child to educate their kids. And all that money buys results. It buys training, it buys teacher attention, it buys careful educational programs. And when it comes time to take the SAT, for example, kids whose parents earn more than $200,000 a year have 250-point higher scores on average than middle-class kids, even as middle-class kids have just 125 points higher on average than kids below the poverty line.
So the gap between the very wealthy and the middle class is much higher than the middle class and the poor.
Much higher, twice as big on the SAT. And on other measures, the gap is even bigger. And the gap between the rich and the poor is truly enormous.
You know, culturally, we seem to have bought into it, some cultures more than others. Indian parents, Asian parents, they are into the meritocracy from the get-go. You know, look, if you just work hard, we were immigrant parents here, we want you to get this best opportunity. The way through is to hit the books, right? I mean, that's, and at some levels, they see role models that have made it to elite Ivy League academies and say, great, that was this person's ticket out. She became a doctor, he became a lawyer. We have transcended our class.
And I think there are two kinds of responses to that, other than saying, of course, it's true for some people. The first sort of response is, it's not good to make social policy based on exceptional cases. Exceptional cases are charismatic for us, they're inspiring for us, but most of us are ordinary, not exceptional. And so if you want to have a fair society and a well-functioning society, it has to be a society in which ordinary people in ordinary circumstances can do well.
All right, Shalom. There's a brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15. And it reads, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke, and all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me." Jumping down to verse 33, it reads, "The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always." All right, and I want to go into a lesson through the Spirit. I'm going to continue to read some of these curses. All right, because when you look at the numbers, all right, it points out a very sobering reality, you know, and it relates to the curses ultimately. You know, what this guy was basically explaining is everything that our people taught, you know, your parents taught you about coming up in Babylon the Great, which is America, all right, was basically a facade. It was an illusion. And this guy is a law professor. He graduated from Yale. So he knows the numbers, and he was basically going into how so-called Negroes in particular, but it applies to Latinos and Native Americans as well, were not taught that they were bought. They were given a dream. They were sold a facade. They were not sold reality, because the idea of going to college, getting an education, and pulling yourself out of the gutter is just not realistic. It all goes back to the money, the wealth. Where's the wealth at? You know, getting a scholarship, all right, and having your education fully paid for is a very rare case. In many cases, Jake has to take out these loans to kind of go to these colleges, and it doesn't guarantee jobs. You know, Jake has this dream of being a lawyer or a teacher. No, I wouldn't say teacher, but a lawyer or a doctor. And they have to take on massive amounts of debt, while their peers, all right, Edomites, all right, so-called white people that go into these institutions, they go into them with a family support system that'll pay for it. So they get out of college without debt. All right. And the moment Jake is a professional lawyer or doctor, they're so consumed with debt and the fact that their whole family, not just their children, depend on them, that they end up in the same cycle. And this is what the Lord is saying in these curses. All right. Matter of fact, let's start here. Let me continue to verse. I'm going to jump down. So I'm going to jump down to this. This is Deuteronomy 28:43. It says, "The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail." All right. And even when you go to the loans and the things, the system itself was built to only allow a select amount of you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans across that threshold. And this is why I let the clip play until he talked about the exceptions, because our people judge progress based on the exceptions, not on the average and the so-called ordinary. Because really none of our people are ordinary, but just for the sake of conversation, you judge your people on the average life of the average member of your society. You don't judge it off of Jay-Z or LeBron James. You judge it off of a random Jake staying in a random state in a random city. And how is their quality of life? And when you look at it from that perspective, Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are under the curses. And this guy is saying that even the American dream that Big Mama sold you of, you know, stay in school, get your GPA up, and, you know, you'll get the scholarship and go to this college. And, you know, one of the conversations he had in this video later on was that even when you deal with Ivy League schools, the top 1% have more of their children in those institutions than the bottom half of society. And what that means is basically those Ivy League schools are basically elite schools for the rich. You may have some jakes that get in because they have great grades, but that's not the average. They're not selecting based on educational credentials alone. It's also social status. And now Esau has transitioned the system into a place where you can't see the overt racism because it's behind a paywall. So if you can't afford to get in, then it's not racist. And what our people don't understand is we're basically a people lost at sea, man. And Jake don't see it that way, but that's the reality. This is Jeremiah 50:6. "My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place." And the reason I bring these things out through the spirit, and I love looking into these numbers, is because our people have no idea, man. In real life, they don't have no idea. They think that the exceptions, you know, these one-off guys that get into these $1 million mansions, and the jakes that are able to play sports and retire with that money or whatever case, that's such a small percentage compared to the rest of your people. But that's all Jake see on TV. So they assume that we've moved further down the line as far as progress. And the reality is that we have not, man. We are a people lost at sea. And at this pace, we're never going to get out, man. You know, our people scoff at the prophets. They scoff at the Lord. But what are you left with? You got this guy on this Grits and Eggs podcast talking about he don't want to hear about us being the real Jews. What's your solution? You know, they talk about building wealth. How? You have to build it with resources. the loans that you get from these Edomites are subprime. They come with high interest rates, and they do that on purpose because they know you won't be able to pay off the loan. These Edomites that talk about working hard and getting it off their bootstraps, that's not the reality. A lot of them were welfare cases. A lot of them are rich and they still use the welfare system to get over. And Jake don't understand. They trying to play the game like a so-called white person, not realizing that the so-called white person is really operating off of true generational wealth. You know, they great granny might have had life insurance that their parents was able to collect on, and they got life insurance so that their children will be taken care of. Jake don't know that type of reality. You just thinking going to school and getting a good job is going to get you out of the mud. And that's not the reality. And this guy, this law professor, is pointing these things out. And when you look at our people as a whole, man, they lost at sea, man. They don't have no idea what's going on. And then when what's meant for their welfare is presented to them, they scoff and mock at it as if they have a better solution. All right, this is Jeremiah 2 and verse 13. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. So they've forsaken the knowledge of the Heavenly Father and the law, statutes, and commandments. The Lord blatantly told us what our condition would be as a nation of people in Deuteronomy 28th chapter from verse 15 to 68 or 69, Salakia. Verification. 68, Salakia. He told us what would happen to us. He didn't have to say you're gonna be subject to subprime loans and you're gonna have Jim Crow. The Lord summed it up in a very simple way, and Jake is too rebellious to see it. Yeah, maybe some Jakes are gonna cross that threshold and be able to so-called make it. But on average, you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are not set up for success in this society, and the Lord set it up this way. All right, first and foremost, that has to be said. The Lord set this up that way. All right, matter of fact, let me get that. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 47. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. So the Lord sent him. It's a reason Jake is in prison houses. It's a reason why the relationship between man and woman don't work. One of the statistics he mentioned was that when you're in a household where both parents are in the household, you have a better chance at success. That's rare in the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American community. All right, and this goes back to the curses. Let's get that one. It's Deuteronomy 28 and 54. So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. Because you can have children, but if they're not growing up in a household where you're there to establish structure, technically they're not your kids anyway, according to the state. But then they're even more so not your kids because now they're left to the wind. They have no discipline, no structure. And this goes back to the curses. The Lord told us what would happen to us. And he said because we forsook him. Everything the Lord told us to do was right and correct concerning us as a nation of people. But we rebelled and tried to go figure it out ourselves, and the Lord let us. All right, y'all think y'all know better? Figure it out. And now we're on the other side of the earth and we are lost at sea, man. That is the reality. As a nation of people, we are lost at sea. And Jake don't see it that way because they got Instagram and social media to give them this mirage of progress. But when you look at these numbers, it sober you up real quick. And they break down that facade that's on the internet. Because you see Jake in these rented whips and these high rises that they done rented for a night. They done did a B&B and pretended like they lived there. And Jake has this impression that everybody winning except them. And the reality is most of you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are losing in this society. We're losing as a nation of people. And then the solution that our people were presented, which is, go to school, get a good education, get a job. This guy's saying your only so-called escape in this society is a facade. It's not even real. The likelihood of you getting a great education and going to a good school and getting a good ass job is so rare among our people that you can't even count it, because you have to measure the status of your people and the state of your people by the average. That's what rulers understand. All right. And that's what the Lord is teaching us to think like rulers. The Lord said, ye are my witnesses. So we're looking at it through the Spirit, and the Lord forces you to do that. He forces you to zoom out and look at us as a nation of people, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the moment you do that, you realize very quickly how bad it is for us, man. It don't get better from here without the Lord, man. And that's why we're comforted with the scriptures, because we understand this will not continue forever. Because you have to keep in mind what this guy's saying is just if the system stays the same. We're not talking about World War III, which is on the cusp. We're not talking about the failing dollar. All right. We're not talking about their attempt to switch to a cashless society. We're moving that to the side and just focusing on the current condition, dealing with this law professor. And he's saying if the game stayed the same, you niggas don't win. Maybe some of y'all win. And he's saying that system don't even work. That whole get a good job and you can pull your family out the mud. And the reason he said it doesn't work anymore is because there was a point where the rich people didn't have to go to school. They didn't have to bring their kids into being lawyers and getting all. They could just be rich. But eventually what happened is those guys who went into school worked hard and became lawyers. All right. Those immigrants who got into the schools and got their degrees and became lawyers and became a part of the professional class, they raised their children to do the same. Whereas Jake keep getting left in the mud. Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans on average keep getting left in the mud. And they don't realize that it's the Lord that did it. All right, this is Wisdom of Solomon 6:1. Hear therefore, O ye kings, and understand. Learn ye that be judges of the earth. Give ear, ye that rule the people, and glory in the multitude of nations. And the reason I'm bringing this out is because the Lord said we are a nation of kings and priests. And the moment you get this truth, you're forced to zoom out. You're forced to look at this as a nation of people, not just your individual state. Your individual state, you may be an exception to a lot of the statistics, but that's not the state of your people as a whole. The Lord said these curses would cover us and overtake us. It doesn't mean you're not gonna have a few that, as the scriptures say, reign like kings without us. But this is a law professor, and he's bringing out the whole, live the square life, or just work hard, go to school, get a scholarship, get a good job, and then you can, bring the whole family out the hood. That shit is unrealistic. And Jake don't realize who they competing against. You competing against Edomites who have their college paid for. Their housing is paid for. They don't even have to work while they're in school. The Jakes that did get to go to college, you had to work. Or you had to take out enormous amounts of loans. And by the time you get into these professional degrees or these professional careers, you have so much debt to pay back. And then you got grandma calling asking for $100 every week or 2 weeks. You got mama asking for $75. You got to bail such and such out. They're asking how much money you got on the funeral because you a lawyer, you a big time lawyer. And Jake don't realize this is the Lord did it. All right. Yahweh Shema Shah did it, and it was to make us reflect. It was really to make us look at our situation and say, yeah, Pops, we blew it. Salakia. It was to make us look at our situation and be like, man, we blew it, man. As a nation of people, we blew it. We left the Lord, and look at us like the prodigal son. All right, real quick, this is Deuteronomy 31:17. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured. And many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that day, are not these evils come upon us, because our God is not among us? And the elect have reached that conclusion. You look at the state of our people, man. Without the Lord, we do not have a chance. That is the reality. And our people don't want to hear from their own. They don't want to hear from the prophets. All right, well, here's an Edomite with all the credentials that Jake respect. And he's saying, look, that whole we told y'all to go to school and get an education. Nah, it's a facade. Maybe some of y'all will make it, but on average, y'all through. He's saying that without saying, because during segregation, you had a trade. By the time you got out of high school during segregation in your black only school, they taught you how to be a plumber. All right. They taught you how to be a carpenter. They taught you some type of trade. So you left high school with a way to feed your family. It's a reason Esau did the integration and then took all the trades out of the schools. Any foundation you thought you had got ripped from under you. Now you moving from job to job and you moving from apartment to apartment. Exactly how he needs you and exactly how he wants you. And the Lord did it first, man. All right. And without this truth, this shit would make you insane. All right. Looking at our condition, this shit would make you insane, man. It'll make you lose your mind without the Lord giving you the comfort of the scriptures. Matter of fact, this is Deuteronomy chapter 28. And man, let me get this. I got to. This is Deuteronomy 28. And I want to jump down to man, it's so much. This Deuteronomy 28 and 34, but I'm going to read it in the NLT. It says, you will go mad because of all the tragedy you see around you. Just watch a Chicago documentary or a Memphis documentary, because at this point, drill done went all across the country. Jake done been to more funerals than weddings. Done got suited up for more court cases and funerals than actual marriages. And we know marriage is folly on this side anyway. But the amount of tragedy Jake has seen before they even become conscious or become an adult, the Lord said we would go mad from seeing all that. And that's why a lot of them young Jakes, them YNs be heavily sedated with all of these prescription medications and all these drugs because of the amount of tragedy. And Jake don't even take time to zoom out and say, man, why is it like this? Because Esau done told him you can change your whole situation and your family situation and just forget about everybody else. Forget about your people. At this point, just fight to be the exception because the average is through. And this is the reality, man. Our people want to avoid this, but the Lord said that he would do this because we forsook him. Matter of fact, I'm going to jump up. To, and I'm going to read this in the NLT. And it reads, this is Deuteronomy 28 and 20 in the NLT. The Lord himself will send on you curses, confusion, and frustration in everything you do, until at last you are completely destroyed for doing evil and abandoning me. Which shows you, as a nation of people, we are completely destroyed. We are in trouble on every side as a nation of people. And Jake don't see it because they have PS5s and because they got the internet and they can go to TikTok and they got their little home studio. You know, they don't really understand the situation we found ourselves in as a nation of people. And when it's presented to them, all right, when the word is given to them, they make mockery of it as if it's a joke. Meanwhile, their life is an expression of the curses. All right. And it's not just ours. We're all in this predicament. The curses cover not just the hopeful elect, but also covers 2/3 of our people. It's just their hope is in this place. Their hope is in a vain thing, whereas the hopeful elect's hope is in the Lord, man. All right, this is 2 Chronicles 36 and 15 in the NLT. It says, the Lord, the God of their ancestors, repeatedly sent his prophets to warn them, for he had compassion on his people and his temple. But the people mocked these messengers of God and despised their words. They scoffed at the prophets until the Lord's anger could no longer be restrained and nothing could be done. And that's the condition that we found ourselves in as a people, man. All right. Now, the hope, through the Spirit is that we know the Lord is going to restore us as a people, that we won't be in this condition forever. All right. And that's the hope and the comfort that we have. Because if you just look at these numbers, and I like to look at these numbers, through the Spirit, I like going into listening to videos about the economy, but especially about the statistics concerning our people. Because when you look at it, it's like you can't do nothing but say, Khan, because the Lord said, look, y'all leave me, y'all through. And you can imagine the rebellious Jakes, especially back in that day, saying, man, we ain't going on no slavery in ships. Imagine the heathens lending to us. Esau ruling over us. Imagine how funny that would be to a Jake in the ancient world. This shit ain't funny no more, man. Ain't none of this shit funny. Ain't none of this shit cool. How we look as a nation of people on the world stage, this shit ain't cool. And when the Lord presents that mercy, like, all right, it's time to come home, Jake scoff to be called black in America. So you trading the Lord to be called a nigga in America. Okay, cool. And then you begin to understand why 2/3 of our people, they just got to go, man. I watched one documentary earlier today where they was asking a Jake in Memphis who was beefing with some other Jakes, and they was like, you know, what if the guys over there said, look, man, let's just squash it, bro. Let's just let bygones be bygones. Let's stop right now. Them niggas said it ain't gonna be over until we all dead, and then it still ain't gonna be over because my homie's gonna continue to slide. We through, man. Throw them all away, man. 2/3 of our people are done. And the Lord, matter of fact, I gotta get this. This is Isaiah chapter 5:3. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. What could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes. And when you look at what the Lord tried to do to correct us and what our people are doing now, it's like, it ain't nothing left. It ain't nothing left. It ain't nothing left. The Lord sent Yahweh Shah. After that, it's really nothing left. Ain't no more lifelines. You know, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You would have 3 lifelines. We ain't got no more lifelines. Yahweh Shah was the last straw, so to speak. That's why it says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. If you niggas ain't know the Lord loved you, he gave you Yahweh Shah. If that ain't enough to make Jake return, them niggas never coming home. And that's the realization you get to. All right, because you first come into the truth, you had this compassion for our people. Then you look at them and you realize it ain't that they dumb. They not slow. They just rebellious. They know what way they supposed to go. They just refuse. And they keep trying to find some little back door to get out of the curses, as if it's possible. Now, we know the comfort through the spirits that the Lord is going to heal us as a nation of people, but it's going to begin with the elect. The rest of the nation is going to have to come back through the loins of the elect. They're going to be the children of the elect, because that's the only solution at this point. And the more you dwell in this truth, in my short time in this truth, I've seen it. You come to the realization of why the Lord got to do it this way. All right, this is Jeremiah 30:17, and I'll end it with this. It says, for I will restore health unto thee. I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith the Lord, because they called thee an outcast, saying, this is Zion, whom no man seeketh after. So the world, just like they see us on the bottom, they are going to see us on the top as a nation of people, beginning with Yahweh Shai, because it belongs to him first and foremost. This is Isaiah 60:18. It says, violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise. But we have to wait on the Lord to do that. Getting a bunch of Jakes to become lawyers and doctors is not going to get us out of this fucked up situation. Excuse my French. But you see it, the more you see it and the more the Lord show it to you, the more you see why the Lord got to get rid of 2/3 of our people. They don't want to get right. They think our problem is money. And it's obvious they're not looking at these numbers. It's obvious they're not watching videos where these professionals are telling you, yeah, we told y'all that shit, but that shit wasn't real. We just told y'all that so we could actually pay for our children to go to high class schools and say it's because they smart. No, it's because they bought it. They bought those tickets and they locked you out through that system. And no matter how hard Jake tried, even if the game stayed the same right now, there's no catching up. You may have an average Jake. I mean, you may have an exception. You may have one Jake that could slide through the cracks. But on average, it's over, man. And we're not even talking about when the baby boomers die and they pass that wealth to the next generation of Edomites. Then that gap going to get even wider. And having a PhD and being a lawyer or a doctor with $200,000 to $250,000 in debt is not going to fix this situation for us, man. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.